Hi guys, Jason here, Robot Lawn Mowers Australia. I've got a quick video to do for you today. We've just received in our latest generic models that we're going to start selling in the next week. We'll have them up online for you. These units are very good quality units. I've been testing one of these units for about 9 months now. And it's come out with incredibly good results considering the price bracket that these are going to fall into. So they're a generic model. They're made by a company called Feniks. They've been making mowers for a lot of years now, and this is their latest generation that they've only just released in the last year or so. The models basically there's only really one model as such, and there's a few different variations of that. So the model is an L310, and we're going to sell that model with a 2.2 amp hour battery and a 4 amp hour battery, and also with or without a Bluetooth signal, so that you can use an Android or iOS app to control the unit. So there'll be 4 variations of the same mower. All the specs of the mower will be exactly the same other than that. I'll start unboxing this for you so you can have a bit of a look at what it all is, and I'll explain a few things along the way about what I've seen and what I've experienced in the testing so far. So let's open it up. So the packaging's really quite good. The box itself is very generic. Obviously there's no bells and whistles on the boxing whatsoever, but there is a cutout in the top here on both of these tabs actually, where there's a cardboard ruler here so that you can measure the distance of the wire when you're doing your installation, which is quite handy. It's all packaged very well. It's all foam cased, so you can see that everything's in its place and everything has somewhere to be, and it doesn't get damaged during transit. Power supply, Australian compliant, as are all our power supplies here at Robot Lawn Mowers. Just be aware when you're buying from eBay sellers and such to make sure that you are getting compliant goods. Basically, a compliant charger will always have the RCM logo on it, which is a little triangle with a tick in the middle. I'll put that up here so you can see the symbol. Anything that plugs into a power point, if it doesn't have that symbol, is not compliant, or is very unlikely to be compliant to Australian conditions. So that the power supply itself is weatherproof, but the plug that plugs it into the power point is not. So the power supply and the 240 volt lead needs to be undercover or out of the weather. Then it has about 8 meters it might be 6 meters. I'll measure that and put it up on the screen here. Of extra low voltage cable that can be installed anywhere in the garden or in the weather. So that's the power supply. The user manual and a few spares here. The user manual is just a colour photocopied paper manual, but it's all very well laid out and explains fairly well. Pretty good for this type of mower, and there's also added instructions there for this particular one, because this has the Bluetooth connection, and it has instructions there on how to connect to the app and how to control it. That app works very well. I've tested that on the Android app at the moment. It works very well. You can remote control the mower through the app, and you can set all the features and functions. It works very well and very seamlessly with a Bluetooth connection that connects almost instantaneously, so it's very good. In the bag here we have some plastic lawn pegs here for holding down the base station. So there's 4 of those to hold the base station down. There's the 2 charge pins that go in the base station that connect the mower to the base station. There is 1 spare set of blades, and these screws here are actually for the battery cover for me when I put the battery in there. And there's actually a little spanner here that actually is for tightening up the connections for the charge pins. The wire. So there's actually 2 of these rolls. There's 100 meters in this roll, and there's 2 100 meter rolls that come with the mower, which is a lot for a small mower. The charge station. The charge station is actually very small, compact. It's very good, to tell you the truth, in comparison to other generic models. I would still put a cover over these. It is all waterproof, however I don't trust them that much in regards to keeping the water out of the actual charge stations themselves. And of course the mowers themselves, I'll always recommend that you install a cover over your mower over the charge station. The mowers spend most of their life at that charge station, so you're definitely best off to try and keep that mower out of the sun as much as possible. So definitely put a cover over any mower over the charge station. And I'll explain a little bit more in a second about that charge station, how this unit docks, because it's very, very good how this unit actually docks. It's quite reliable. Pegs, there is 140 ground pegs for installing the wire, so that's quite a lot. Okay, so the foam out of there, and you'll see that the mower again is in a foam base, so it's all packaged very well. Nothing can really hurt the mower in this here. Mower out of there, and underneath the mower is the second 100 metre roll of wire. So the mower also has these bits of foam here just around the top cover here. That's just for shipping, so because the mower itself has bump sensors here, so the top cover is floating. It floats on 4 springs. The mower itself is a 4-bladed centrifugal. Actually, it's not a centrifugal. It's a 4-bladed razor blade cutting system. Normally, these types of cutting systems would have a centrifugal force or a kickback blade system. These ones are not. These are fixed, and they have 2 screws in each blade. So I've been running mine for 9 months now at home. I haven't had to touch those blades as yet. They're actually still in very good condition, and it's done a very, very good job. These are a 4-wheel mower. Again, I find that to be good in most ways, because if there's a small divot in your yard with the second wheel on the front, it really can get over some small holes without actually getting that front wheel stuck. They are very small wheels. They have sensors on the shafts of the wheels, so if the mower does get picked up, it does set sensors and turns itself off, which is great. But yes, these wheels are very small. There's no bearings on these front wheels either, so they tend to get a little bit squeaky at times, so you generally have to put a bit of grease in the shaft there, but other than that, they really do seem to do a very good job. And basically the traction of the mower all round is pretty good. I've got about 20-degree slope on my front yard, and I've had no problems at all, which is about the capacity of this mower and pretty much most mowers. Is 20 degrees, which is about 35 to 45% gradient, which is what most mowers are rated at. So a couple of things that I truly believe this mower actually exceeds the quality and standard of a lot of other generic models, is that this guy has all brushless motors, so the cutting motor and drive motors are all brushless. The circuitry, the programming of the software and the firmware in this machine is much more easy to manage. It's very user friendly in the way it operates. It's simple, there's not a lot of features in it which you don't really need, but it just steps you through it, and it's very easy to program and control from the controller on the unit, rather than having to use the app. A lot of generic models, you generally have to use the app to get the full features out of the mower, particularly something like the lawn mowers behind me here that only have buttons on them rather than an LCD screen. You have to use the app to actually program them, because you cannot program them through the buttons. So this guy, entry-level price, but you get all brushless motors. You get an LCD screen with a full programmable control at the LCD screen, and it's very user-friendly, and it steps you through very well, and the firmware is well laid out. Back to the charge station. I made a comment before that I really like these charge stations, and I'll tell you why. I'll just loosely screw these charge pins in. Now, the receptacle in the front of the mower, where the actual charge pins go into the front of the mower, they're angled in 4 directions. So it doesn't really matter which way this mower approaches the charge station, it nearly always docks, no matter what it does. So in all honesty, for a nose-in charge station like this, you generally spend a lot of time on other models trying to align the charge station correctly, making sure that it all works right, and then test the mower 10 times to make sure it actually docks correctly every time. This guy, you honestly put it down, pin it down, and walk away. It's done straight away. So it really is a very good design as far as the charge station is concerned and how it docks. The mower itself also retries docking if it does miss. So if it misses by so far that it actually hits over here or something like that, and it actually hits the front cover here, it'll actually reverse up, it'll straighten itself and then try again, and it continues to keep trying until it actually docks. Most other mowers, all mowers, just about, whether they're generic or high-end brands, if they fail to dock, they'll generally leave the charge station, go around the charge station, find the boundary wire, and they'll continue all the way around the boundary wire and back to the charge station again. And in some cases that might mean the battery might actually go flat before it gets back, because it was already flat to start with. So this guy, when he comes back to base, he just keeps trying until he gets on there without going around the wire again. I find it to be very, very good. The multi-zone function on this guy, he's up to 4 zones, and as I said earlier, the programming at the mower level is very, very good. So setting up the multi-area function from the mower is very, very easy. You set it into, you read the manual obviously, but you set it into its area search mode, and then you let it run. You press the stop button when it gets to the area that it needs to, that you want it to leave in, and then you confirm that entry and you press the stop button again for the next area. It's very easy, and it's very clear on the LCD screen what it wants you to do. So programming from the mower, very easy for multi-areas. For those of you that aren't aware, so the multi-area function generally is just to get the mower to travel to different spots on the boundary wire for it to depart and start mowing. So if your boundary wire is installed in such a way that it has separate areas, then it will travel along the boundary wire to that separate area and then start mowing at that location, and then the other zones will start at different locations. It could be as simple as one large zone and you have the mower starting in 4 different spots along the boundary wire of that zone. But in any case, it handles up to 4 zones, which is generally plenty. I think the only downside I've found is when you program the zones, you can only program 1 zone for a time period per day. So you can't have it mow zone 1 and then later in the day mow zone 2. You can only have it mow zone 1 for that day, and then the following day you'll have to have it mowing zone 2, which is fine for most cases, and realistically you don't generally want it to mow multiple zones per day, but this one has a limitation where you can only mow 1 zone in a given day for whatever time period you set it for. Quite possibly the best feature of this guy that really supersedes all the other generic models is that this guy will stop if he happens to find himself on the outside of the wire. Most generic models, like I said, all the lawnmower range will do this, is if it crosses the boundary wire whilst mowing and doesn't realise that it's crossed for whatever reason that might be, it shouldn't do that in the first place, but if it does get on the other side of the wire, other generic models will not know they're on the wrong side of the wire, and they will continue running until such time as they're physically stopped. This guy knows he's on the outside of the wire and will stop, no matter how he gets there. If he happens to get on the outside of the wire, it will stop. So an example of this might be heading down a slippery hill, if it's heading downhill whilst following the wire or mowing, and it ends up being slippery from mud or whatever it might be. If it slides over the wire, this guy will stop. If other generic models slide over the wire while they're mowing, they'll recover, they'll find traction somewhere and they'll recover themselves and they'll continue mowing even though they're on the outside of the wire, which is not a good thing, but this guy, really good. He knows he's on the wrong side of the wire and he will stop. When they do stop, they'll go into alarm and he sounds 5 rather loud beeps that testing at home, I hear him from inside of the house. There's also a bit of a feature of these guys, which you don't really get on pretty much any mowers, is that you can actually change the colour. We have 3 colours that will be available. The standard will be great, it'll come in great, the standard, but for an extra few dollars, I'm not sure what the price is going to be at this point in time. For an extra few dollars, we can swap that cover over for you, and you can go for the blue or the orange. So very unusual that you don't generally have a mower that you can change the cover. So as far as coverage goes with these guys, the manufacturer states that they'll go to 900 square meters with a 2.2 amp hour battery, and they'll go to 1200 square meters for the 4.4 amp hour battery. I think that's being a little ambitious for such a small mower. I honestly wouldn't install one of these mowers in more than 500 square meters, mostly because they travel at about 21 meters per minute, which is a bit slower than a lot of other units. It's about same speed as the Works models, but certainly slower than the Lawnmowers and certainly slower than the Ambrosios. They only have a 17 centimeter cutting width on the blade system, which again is that four blade system, and it's a fixed blade razor blade system. 17 centimeters, you're traveling at about 20 meters per minute. They'll take a long time to mow 1,000 square meters, and I'm not even sure it would actually physically be capable of doing so, to tell you the truth. So I would possibly cap these guys out at about 500 square meters because of their cutting width and their travel speed. I'll do some further testing on that as time goes on, just to sort of see exactly what we can get out of them. The one I have at home is only mowing 100 square meters, and it takes approximately 3 hours, two to 3 hours to mow that 100 square meters. So if you're doing 500 square meters, it's probably going to take something like 15 to 20 hours to do a single mow. And of course, in the middle of summer, you want these guys to be covering the area twice. So you'd be looking at something like 40, 50 hours a week for it to mow 500 square meters. So yeah, so trying to cover 1,000 square meters like the manual says, or 1,200 on the bigger mower, would be very ambitious for a mower of this size. The navigation technique of these guys, they're really quite good. So they generally know if they've hit an obstacle on the left or the right hand side of the front, so they will turn appropriate to which side they bump on. So if something hits the left hand side of the mower, they'll generally reverse up and they'll turn right. Same thing with the perimeter wire. If it approaches on a left hand angle, it'll turn right into the zone instead of backing up and trying to turn left. Which means they navigate their way through narrow spaces quite well. They do reverse up quite a fair way when they do hit the boundary wire, so they reverse probably about 800 millimeters, which tends to cause the mower to not navigate narrow sections of lawn because of the perimeter wire. So if the perimeter wire is closer than a meter apart, then the mower could bump into the perimeter wire and then reverse basically all the way up to the other perimeter wire. So I would suggest that wire to wire would be something like 800 millimeters would be the minimum distance between two wires if they were travelling down a narrow area. But other than that, they do navigate very well. I find that even putting things like deck chairs and things out on the lawn, these guys tended to get right in amongst underneath the chair and still manage to get in and out without getting stuck. So they do a very good job of navigating. The cutting height adjustment of these guys, so they're 3 to 5 centimeters, they say. I haven't actually measured it yet, but it does say 3 to 5 centimeters, so they'll be very close to that. So there's not a lot of adjustment. I tend to mow most of my lawns these days at about 45 millimeters, thereabouts, so 4.5 centimeters. So this guy will go up to 5. The maximum amount of wire that can go on these guys is 400 meters. A lot of others are about 600 meters, but 400 meters for this guy is probably quite plenty, I'd say. Particularly the size of lawn that you'd be installing it on, it would be very difficult to get beyond 400 meters. The weight of him, I'll have to measure him probably. I believe the whole box weight is only just under 12 kilos. I think the mower itself is about 8, so it's very light. Quite good if you do need to be able to pick this mower up and move it from one area to another. If you have closed areas around the place where the mower can't travel from one area to the other, then this guy actually is really good. It's got a little handle on the back there as well that you can pick him up. So it's quite agile, nice and light, easy to get around. Noise level of this guy is rated at 57 dB. They're much the same as all the others, but the mower itself, you barely hear the cutting motor spinning. and it doesn't rattle along very much. So it gets along quite silently without too much trouble at all. Like I said, all you really hear is a little bit of winding of the gearboxes. So I think that's about it, guys. I think I've mentioned everything. The voltage of the batteries, these guys are they say 18 volt, but they're actually 20 to 21 volt batteries that go in these guys. And like I said before, it will come with a 2.2 amp hour battery, or you can upgrade to the 4.4 amp hour battery. So I'll leave it at that, and you can contact us on our email via sales@robotlawnmowers.com.au. Our web address is www.robotlawnmowers.com.au, or you can find us on Facebook by just searching for Robot Lawn Mowers Australia. Thanks for watching.